In a leaked memo, the FBI suggests that, quote, radical traditionalist Catholics who oppose abortion and think homosexuality is a sin are, quote, potential violent extremists, and that the FBI should develop sources within Catholic churches to keep an eye on things. Now, I've taken the entire memo, which the FBI has since taken down due to intense backlash, and turned it into a free PDF that you can download at quickconservative.com. But before we get into the details, let's just go ahead and address the elephant in the room. Maybe your gut reaction when you hear a group of people oppose abortion or same-sex marriage is that they're hateful, bigoted people. And maybe they are. Maybe they're not, and that's where I'm casting my vote, but worst case scenario, let's just say that they are. So what? There's a huge jump between believing someone's a mean person and believing the FBI should spy on them because they're a potential terrorist. And things get real dicey real fast when we start labeling anyone who disagrees with us as dangerous. Do you know how easy it would be for the FBI to call you a violent extremist for holding that very belief? Watch. This takes less than 30 seconds. Historically, violent extremists have made mass generalizations against different religious groups, facts, and used their suspicion of radicalized elements within those faiths to justify preemptive behavior against those groups. Big facts. Since you made a mass generalization against Catholics and think the radical elements of their faith justifies preemptive behavior against them, just a little spying to make sure they don't get too out of line, by your own logic, you are a potential violent extremist because you share some of the same views as people who have committed extreme acts of violence in the past. If that seems like a stretch, now you can understand why suggesting an FBI policy initiative be built around that same logic is so outrageous. And if you think the specific example I gave is out of left field, just look at China's treatment of the Uyghurs, a minority Muslim population. As we speak, the Chinese government is essentially imprisoning people in re-education camps. We won't even get into the reports of mass murder and torture, all in the name of combating, quote, potential terrorism and religious, quote, extremism. And those aren't my words. I'm quoting directly from the United Nations. But the point being, you either accept that individuals have the right to possess strongly held controversial beliefs without warranting government interference, or you don't. You don't get to say, well, I can hate people that I perceive to be bigots, but those people can't hate me. Their hate is potentially violent, my hate is righteous. That's not how the Constitution works. That's not how logic works. Heck, that's not even how hate works. So with that in mind, let's dive into the details. On February 8th, 2023, Kyle Seraphin published a leaked memo from the FBI's Richmond Division, dated January 23rd, 2023, on, quote, radical traditionalist Catholics, referred to as RTCs. The heading on page 1 reads, quote, interest of racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists in radical traditionalist Catholic ideology almost certainly presents new mitigation opportunities. So who are these radical traditionalist Catholics? Well, according to the FBI, radical traditionalist Catholics are typically characterized by a disdain for recent popes, particularly, quote, Pope Francis and Pope John Paul II. And, in case you're wondering, according to the FBI, radical traditionalist Catholics also prefer Latin Mass. Who knew? And pre-Second Vatican teachings and traditions. The FBI notes that traditionalist Catholics also prefer Latin Mass, but they lack the, quote, more extremist ideological beliefs and violent rhetoric of radical traditionalist Catholics. The government memo also notes an increase in hostility towards abortion rights advocates on social media sites in the run-up to and aftermath of the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. Interestingly, it also predicts that racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists are likely to increase interest in radical traditionalist Catholics in the next 12 to 24 months, leading up to the presidential election. The FBI lists policy issues of, quote, mutual interest to both violent extremists and radical traditionalist Catholics, including abortion rights, immigration, affirmative action, and LGBTQ protections. Now, my favorite part, they actually added a little disclaimer about potential criminality not negating the First Amendment rights of Catholics, and that the FBI doesn't collect information on people solely for the purpose of monitoring activities protected by the First Amendment. And of course, they had to say potential criminality because, again, this memo isn't saying that Catholics committed any crimes, just that their faith may not support abortion or LGBTQ protections. And so, therefore, they are potential violent extremists. But if you think that's crazy and, a little ironic, wait till you hear the plan. The FBI wants to mitigate the threat of violent extremism through, and I quote, outreach to traditionalist Catholic parishes and the development of sources with the placement and access to report on racially and ethnically motivated violent extremists seeking to use radical traditionalist Catholic social media sites or places of worship as facilitation platforms to promote violence. Translation: the FBI wants to develop informants within the Catholic Church, literally within their, quote, places of worship. Oh, and then, as if it couldn't get any better, in an apparent disregard for thorough source vetting, the FBI memo cites the Southern Poverty Law Center, which doesn't provide substantiated evidence for the majority of its claims, and exercises, in one former FBI agent's words, quote, blatant partisan blindness. Oh, and it also cites left-leaning online publications, The Atlantic and Salon. Now, mind you, these aren't casual references. One of the foremost intelligence agencies in the country is basing policy recommendations off of this reporting. The Atlantic, Salon, and the Southern Poverty Law Center. As the same former FBI special agent notes, quote, when the FBI generates an intelligence product, it's important to note they analyze sources. Typically, strict source vetting removes partisanship and bias, so a product is both consistent with federal law and can add value to the FBI's overall mission. Of note, this document was reviewed and approved for release by the FBI Richmond Chief Division Counsel, who is the office's top lawyer. So this memo wasn't written by some rogue agent and just fell through the cracks. It was reviewed and approved for release by the office's top lawyer. Now, the capstone to all of this is the memo leaked and the FBI freaked out because of public backlash. They took the document down and said they're conducting a review, but the Attorney General of Virginia wasn't having it and wrote a super angry letter to the U.S. Attorney General and the FBI Director. 19 other state attorney generals signed it, and you've just got to read it. I included it in the free PDF on quickconservative.com, and it is super intense. I'm just going to share one quick paragraph from it, and then we'll wrap this up. Quote, we are particularly alarmed by the memorandum's suggestion that FBI operatives should be developing, quote, sources with access within, quote, places of worship to identify the bad Catholics. The FBI has been down this road before, having infiltrated countless mosques throughout the country in the wake of the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks. The FBI disavowed this ignominious practice in 2008 and revised its internal guidelines in 2010 and 2013 to prevent its operatives from callously disregarding the religious liberty of American citizens. It would be very concerning indeed if the FBI had revived this practice against American Catholics, or worse, if it had never shut down the program in the first place. Now, I'm a Christian. I love Jesus Christ with my entire heart. The peace and comfort and protection he provides far exceeds anything you could ever hope to get from this world. However, I totally get that if you don't share those views, this whole report could seem super biased, which is why I can't encourage you enough to go to quickconservative.com and just download the memo for yourself. If you enjoyed this story, you can follow Quick Conservative on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. I also have a podcast and a free newsletter. You can find it all on quickconservative.com.